Hello everyone, and this is my review for WWE Smackdown on November 22nd, 2016. And well, of course, this is their fallout from Survivor Series and everything that happened. Things to really talk about. First of all, they did, again, a lot of focus around James Ellsworth throughout the night, but you also had a couple other little quirks and twists and turns going around throughout the night through a couple little other storylines that they decided to put out there. For one, they start off the show with Shane McMahon talking about the Survivor Series men's tag team match, of course the one that SmackDown won. Of course, they gloss over the aspect that the tag teams lost. And they did talk a little bit later in the night about the women's match as well, but they glossed over the other ones and mainly focused around this. He was calling out basically everybody, saying like he was shocked by how the Wyatts decided to team up with everybody and work together, but the aspect of Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles not being able to put their petty differences aside almost costing the team the match. And he immediately gets interrupted by Dean Ambrose, who starts this little joking cork throughout the entire night. Starting to hear, like, Shane mentions how sore he is and everything is like, but Dean's like kind of like doing the little elbow thing or patting him on the shoulder really hard or something in that sense. And it was coming off as like he's trying to ease the fact that, he teamed up with the Raw guys, with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, to do like a little Shield reunion and take out AJ Styles throughout the entire night. So eventually Ellsworth is brought out like as almost like a distraction from the aspect of Ambrose about to getting chewed out from Shane McMahon for what he had done. This is where they bring up that Ellsworth has been offered a full-time contract with the SmackDown Live crew. But also, Shane, throughout the entire night, tells Ambrose that he's got to go. It's like, the way that you've been acting and everything, you just got to go. And that starts a little cork of things throughout the entire night. But at the end, for the end of the segment, AJ Styles eventually comes out, and he runs down Ellsworth and everything in that sense, and tries to get him to put his contract on the line, which he eventually does in a ladder match. And then at the end of the segment, this is where they begin everything with Ambrose. It's like Ambrose was already told to leave, and all of a sudden he comes to the crowd and just shows up in the middle of the ring with both guys. And it's like, wait, what? And this began a little cork throughout the night where, like, Ambrose, you see Ambrose leaving the building. Later in the night when they're doing another backstage segment. They had a lot of backstage segments on this show. But you had a backstage segment with Shane McMahon, Daniel Bryan, Becky Lynch, Alexa Bliss, and Natalya. Eventually, this is how it all went together. Basically, Alexa comes in. Daniel Bryan just like bolts afterwards because he had other things to do, and so Shane starts having to take care of Alexa about the aspect of when she's getting her rematch. And eventually, this leads to Becky coming in, and then it eventually leads to Natalya coming in. They do announce the Alexa Bliss and Becky Lynch for TLC at this point. And then eventually Natalya, which this is so funny that she starts quoting everybody. And I love how Alexa reacts to this. It's like, oh God, not again. You know what? I'm done with this. Don't want to put up with it. I'm gone. That's where they actually make mention to the 5-on-5 women's match, talking about who attacked Nikki Bella. So there was one of the corks throughout the night. You don't really get any resolution to that, but you do get something with Nikki and Carmella a little bit later on as well. But also they set up a match with Becky Lynch and Natalya. And at the end of the segment, you see Dean Ambrose come in. It's like, Dean Ambrose shows up again. He shows up a couple one other time in the night before the main event, saying, it's like, yeah, he came in with a pizza box. It's like, yeah, you told me to leave and go get some pizza and bring it back. No, I told you just to leave. And this led to, of course, hijinks and everything. Even led to Becky throwing out a pizza pun in there. And you hear it in the background as Dean's leaving. It's like, I heard it. I love it. one of those little moments. Like, a lot of the stuff tonight came off as more semi-comical towards everything, especially with the backstage segments. Like, Dean Ambrose showed up as the Mountie at one point as well. And this is where Shane, like, flips out on him. This is the good thing that I like about that aspect, is that Shane throughout the entire night is just annoyed with Dean Ambrose because he almost cost him the match at Survivor Series that he was like busting his ass for and everything. And then, of course, wasn't listening to him throughout the entire night. So typical thing for a boss was like, why aren't you listening? Just go. And he flips out on him, and this eventually leads to Daniel Bryan talking with Shane, having him leave and take a break because he had been through everything he had done. So some good stuff in there, good comedy in there to go along with it. Oddly enough, not really too bad, but there was, like I said, a lot of backstage segments on this show based around that, where usually Raw is a lot more backstage, while SmackDown's not so much of the backstage stuff going on. But you got a little bit more of that here, and this is kind of building up stuff to TLC and everything. You even had, again, another backstage segment with Miz getting interrupted by Daniel Bryan during a photo shoot, and they start talking about another Miz celebration and everything about that sense. And instead, Daniel Bryan said he didn't like the way that you defended the Intercontinental title, made SmackDown look like a joke in that sense, the way he did it, and puts him in another Intercontinental title match against Kalisto because he had been screwed out of the Cruiserweight title on Sunday with Baron Corbin. So Miz goes up against Kalisto right after that, and Miz wins with a distraction from Baron Corbin. Again, in this sense. And this leads to, I won't say hijinks, but this leads to, Corbin laying out Kalisto again. And then eventually Miz, as he's going up the rampage, he gets super kicked by Dolph Ziggler, who, of course, is going to get his rematch at TLC. And that was done in another backstage segment later that night with Daniel Bryan and Miz saying, he's like, you're right, this got to end. You guys are going to have one more match because Dolph has the guaranteed rematch clause, but this is the final one, and we're going to make you go with a bang, and they make a ladder match. Again, not a bad way of going. Like I said, SmackDown's definitely been the more quirky show out of both of them, and it played off pretty well here throughout the entire night. Like, the main aspect of seriousness behind this is the tag team turmoil match that they had with everybody. The only problem I have with the tag team turmoil match, you had all 6 teams in there. You had the Ascension Hype Bros, Von Villains, Breezango, American Alpha, and the Usos, or the 6 main tag teams outside of the tag team champions in there. The only problem I had with this match was the rapid fire eliminations that they did. Like, the only one of these matches that seemed like it had any competitiveness towards it was the Hype Bros and the Ascension right at the beginning. Otherwise, it was kind of rapid fire after that. Like, the Von Villains got rid of Hype Bros really quick, and then American Alpha got rid of, or not Von Villains, but Breezango got rid of the Hype Bros real quick. Then American Alpha got rid of Breezango really quickly, and then they got rid of the Von Villains really quickly. So it was like, boom, 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 boom. Let's just get to the Usos and American Alpha. That's what people want to see. And, well, lo and behold, really good match between the two, between both sides here. American Alpha going over was probably the best choice, I think. They kind of needed a little bit more since coming up they haven't necessarily done too much. But then again, I don't think they expected the whole Heath Slater Rhino thing to take off like it did either, to go along with it. But American Alpha going over in what was a really good match between the Usos and American Alpha. And then they immediately get interrupted by the Wyatts. And Bray's like, you guys haven't faced all the teams. And they lead into next week with American Alpha going up against the Wyatts. And the winner of that is going to go up against Heath Slater and Rhino at the pay-per-view. The only crazy thing, or the only bad thing really about it is like, okay, now they just won Tag Team Turmoil, thinking they were going to get it, but no, now they have to face the Wyatts. Though, in all fairness, with the way that they looked in the Survivor Series match, they should be head to head with American Alpha in the terms of the number one contendership at that point in time as well. But it should be an interesting match, and we'll see where they go with everything on that one with next week. Natalya going up against Becky Lynch. Standard fare here, match was fine. Match was actually pretty good between Becky Lynch and Natalya. Alexa Bliss was on commentary, but standard fare here, Becky Lynch wins, and again, like we've seen throughout most of this build-up, is like after Becky kind of gets the upper hand or gets a win in the match, she immediately gets laid out by Alexa Bliss, gets laid out here again to go along with it. You had a backstage segment with Natalya, or not Natalya, but Nikki Bella and Carmella. Basically, like Nikki accusing Carmella of attacking her at Survivor Series, but Carmella denies it and even says, like, and which is completely true, it's like, every other time I've attacked you, I've laid claim to those attacks. Why wouldn't I do that here? In that case, to go along with it. But they also said it doesn't fully matter, like their feud's been contested so hotly throughout the entire time that a no DQ match was made for TLC between the two of them, which is probably the best way of going with everything on that sense. Baron Corbin as well was also in the match. After he had attacked Kalisto, costing him the Intercontinental title and everything, he gets interrupted by Daniel Bryan and gets put in a match afterwards for what he had done against Kane. His match with Kane, well, it didn't really last long, which is fine in the end. Which is completely fine in the end there. Baron Corbin wins after Kalisto gets involved. Kane chokeslays him, and then Kalisto grabs a chair and does a spin kick to him, which eventually leads, I think, during Talking Smack, to Baron Corbin and Kalisto being made for TLC in a chairs match. Okay, that's going to be interesting. It feels like they're leading into Baron Corbin like easily winning this one or something in that sense. I don't know where they're fully going with it. It's definitely not one of the better points of the show, but it will be interesting to see how they play that match with, you got the smaller guy and you have David and Goliath, but they both can use chairs in the match. It'll be interesting to see. This brings us to the main event of the night, though. James Ellsworth versus AJ Styles in a ladder match. And like I said, they've been doing the hijinks and everything with Dean Ambrose finding his way in and everything in that sense. This ladder match was rather short. And, oh yeah, I forgot to even mention this during the beginning segment. The ladder match was made, like, Ellsworth's contract was on the line, but if Ellsworth won, not only would he get to keep his contract, but he would get a future WWE title shot. And, you know what? I think I'm getting to the point with a lot of people here. This whole Ellsworth thing, especially going over the WWE champion, is kind of getting old to that aspect. Like, this is the third time now. Third time they've had Ellsworth go over AJ Styles. And the match itself was fine. The way they did it and the way they booked it was completely fine. Made it look like it was completely a fluke and everything in that sense to go along with it. But it's kind of getting old to that sense. Like, Dean Ambrose comes out, he's in the Ottawa Senators jersey and everything, and the one little good quip that he does, he takes off the helmet and then he throws the gloves down like hockey fight style. Like, if you ever watched hockey and watched them go with a fight, they don't just like take off their gloves or anything like that. No, they take the gloves and throw them off to the ground and then start fighting each other whenever they do when it does happen. So he does play that little quip in there, which was kind of cool. And the end saw Ellsworth push the ladder over, and as he was setting up the ladder again, AJ looks like he's getting back in the ring because he had fallen out to the outside of the ring and everything. He hits him with Ellsworth hits him with a super kick, and AJ's foot gets tied up in the ropes, which causes Ellsworth to be able to climb the ladder and win the match with as injured as he looked throughout the entire time. But again, it's kind of, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of getting old a little bit, and we're going to see where they go with everything here. At this point in time, the way that they're playing this off, it feels so much for an Ellsworth heel turn somewhere down the road, and it'll be interesting to see when they do that. Maybe a TLC or something a little bit later. Who knows when they're going to be going with everything down the road here with that potential storyline. But it feels like that's where they're going with it, and I don't know if that's going to be the actual case, but we'll see where they go along with everything. Overall this week's SmackDown, like the way that they played everything off, I actually played it quite right. Shane being annoyed with Dean Ambrose, but Ambrose continually finding his own way in, so throwing a little bit of comedy into it to go along with the seriousness there. Continuing on with Miz and Ziggler setting up the ladder match for TLC, setting up a no DQ match for TLC with Nikki Bella and Carmella is the proper way of going. And a bunch of other things that ended up going through the card, like with Becky Lynch and Alexa Bliss continuing their thing, even if it is standard fare for where they're going with everything right now. They're at least continuing on with it. And of course, this thing with American Alpha and now having to go up against the Wyatts to get a tag team title shot and see where they're going to be going with that. And if they're going to put the tag titles on the Wyatts or something in that sense down the road here. Overall, not a bad SmackDown this week. Even if the Ellsworth stuff is getting a little bit daunting now and a little bit tiresome with how much they've been focusing around it. Overall, not a bad SmackDown this week. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I have for you this week on SmackDown. So that is my review this week for WWE Smackdown Live. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a great day.